Assalamu alaikum once again. Welcome back to a data communication course. In this class, we will learn about the definition of data communication, components of data communication, open system interconnect OSI model, character codes, ASCII and Unicode. So the data communications actually happens when we want to share any data between two or more computers. This process is called data communication, and it requires to form a network between the devices that we need to communicate. If we don't have the network, there will be no communications between the data. So the networks actually provide networking services between any devices that we need to communicate. And the communications actually between two endpoint uses something called protocol. Protocol is the mean that communication used to actually conduct the communication between the devices. For example, here in this example, this user actually wants to browse a document or a file. Okay, the first step is that is going to do. The user clicks on a link to indicate which document is to be retrieved. After clicking on this link, the browser must determine the addresses that contains the document, and it does this by sending a query to its local name server. And then the third step is going to actually get the response from the server. Once the address is known, the browser establishes a connection to the specified machine, usually a transmission control protocol TCP connection. In order for the connection to be successful, the specified machine must be ready to accept the TCP connections, or otherwise it's going to be declined. And then the browser runs a client version of HTTP, which issues a request specifying both the name of the document and the possible document formats that it can be handled. If if the HTTP receiver agree, then the machine that contains the requested document runs a server version of HTTP. Where it reacts to the HTTP request by sending an HTTP response which contains the desired documents in the appropriate format. And then finally, the TCP connection is then closed and the user may view the document. These are the 6 stages of using the internet or browsing the internet to find any document. In this figure, we can see actually the HTTP client when he requests from the HTTP server. If the HTTP server agrees to the request, then he will respond to the client to actually show the document, or otherwise, if it's declined, there will be no document to actually show. And for any data communication, it must be some components that we need to consider. For example, the message, which is the data to be communicated, the source of the information that is going to be sent out. And then we have the sender, which is actually the device that sends this data message. And then we have the transmissions medium, which is the physical link by which the message travels to the sender, to receiver. And then we have the receiver, which is actually the device that's going to receive the message and is considered to be the destination of the information, the output of the information, while the source of the information is considered as the input of the information. So what is actually OSI model? The model is actually a theoretical stack of 7 layers that could be used as a reference to help understand how network operates. This model is actually was introduced to standardize a network in a way that allowed multi-vendor systems. Prior to this model, we used to have only one vendor network because the devices from one vendor couldn't actually communicate with others. And let's take a look of these 7 components of OSI model. Starting from the bottom, we have layer 1, which is the physical layer. It's actually the lowest layer of the OSI model, and its key responsibility is to carry the data across physical hardware such as Ethernet cables. Layer 2 is actually the data link. At this layer, the physical addresses are added to the data, and this is the source and the destination MAC. The addresses switches are located at this layer. Third layer is the network. The network layer is actually handles the IP addresses and routing at this stage of the OSI model. The source and destination IP addresses are added. Routers operate on this layer. And for the fourth layer, which is transport, the transport of the OSI model adds the transport protocols such as TCP and UDP. TCP, for example, is used for error handling and sequencing to ensure data is lost. This layer also adds the source and destination port numbers. And then we have layer 5, which is session. This layer is responsible for establishing and terminating connections between devices. And for the following layer, which is presentation, this layer formats the data in a way that receiving an application can understand it. So this layer also able to encrypt and decrypt the data if needed. And for the final layer, which is the application, this layer is actually where application and user communicate. Application specific protocols are used in this layer, such as SMTP, which is simple mail transfer protocol. So, for example, to understand the meaning of this model and why do we need it, if we actually want to send an email, the email will start from the application to presentation to session to transport network data link to the physical. So anything that we use the internet or sending an email, it goes through the these 7 layers of OSI model. Now let's talk about character codes. We have 2 types of character codes, which are ASCII and Unicode. The first one is ASCII, is actually the American Standard Code for Information Interchange. And ASCII simply means that representing the idea of using numbers to represent text. Computers are not actually they don't understand text as it is, as we actually type it or use it, or the way that we see text in computers. Computers usually convert any text internally so that they actually can read it. So why do we need it? Why do we need ASCII actually to restore text in computer's memory? Computer memory can only read numbers, so any text added will be actually coded into numbers. So the purpose of ASCII was actually to provide a standard code, various symbols, visible and invisible symbols. So as we can see here, ASCII actually is used to represent characters. Each letter in from these letters are actually represented in binary numbers in the computer. So when you type A in a computer, the computer will read it as 01000001, not as it is as we can see it. So this is actually the meaning of ASCII. ASCII is actually the idea of representing letters instead of numbers. Second type, which is Unicode. As its simplest, Unicode is a standard for representing, a wide range of characters and symbols. Every character is assigned for a code point, which is really just number that is uniquely identifies for like many years. So Unicode main objective is actually to enable a single unique character set that is capable of supporting all characters from all scripts, as well as symbols that are commonly utilized for computer processing throughout the globe. So the computer, once again, does not read letters the way that we see it. It converts each and every letter to a binary numbers so that it could be saved in the computers. And these are examples of how Unicode text encoding examples. For example, the letter A, the code point is U plus 0061. UTF minus 16 is 0061, and so on. So once again, each character or each letter has its own unique, code points in the Unicode character.